At the very beginning of this series of videos that I've been making about literacy, I know I talked about the different kinds of literacy and how our concept of literacy itself has changed over the years. I wanted to return to that today because I read an article this week, or I read a little bit of a précis of an article this week about racial literacy. The article referred to the fact that there are lots of places in lots of parts of the world where people don't know a lot about the rest of the world. They only know about their own little area that they live in and their own country sometimes. And the article was talking about the fact that in the United States in particular, because this is where this book came from, or this article was written for an American journal, that reading books that deal with questions of race or questions of diversity are important because over time, children develop an understanding of the rest of the world and the way we are so often different and yet exactly the same. As I say this, and as I'm talking to you, it seems to me I need to point out that and remind you that literacy is not a start and a stop kind of thing. It's not something that we reach a point and you can say you're literate. We always are becoming more literate. We are always gaining ideas about the world around us and filing them in our brain to help us understand the world. And we, each of us, whether we teach young children, middle school children, high school children, or adults, we each of us have to have a role to play in the development of literacy skills. When I go to the library today, the public library, I can pick up books off of the shelf that are written by black adults for black students. I can read books written by Jewish authors primarily for Jewish students. I can read books written by Native Indian authors primarily for Native Indian children. I can read folk tales and legends from all over the world. I can read them for myself, but I need to be reading them to the students in my class. I need to expose my students or my children to as diverse a variety of reading materials as possible. I've read books for children not too long ago that opened up a world to me as a senior citizen about the way of life and the issues that young black children and their parents struggle with in being raised, even in diverse communities in the United States. The more I read books like that or watch movies like that, the more I develop an awareness of the other. In our world today, it's important that we encourage kids to understand about the other. And there are books that help us do that. That doesn't mean you have to go over backwards. To be very honest with you, I don't believe that we should have a Black History Month. We should be developing history and including history of the Native Americans and the Black Americans and the Europeans that came to the United States. It should be integrated because that's how we do it in our brain. We should be constantly reading books that reflect a difference of experiences and then sitting down with our students or them sitting and us walking around and asking them questions about the experiences that these other groups have had. Sometimes they'll watch a movie or a TV program and nobody will be there to challenge them, to ask them to think about what they saw, but they do. One of the best books I remember reading in my years of teaching was the book Sounder. And I'm not going to look up the name of the author right now. I'm just, as I think about it, Sounder was about a young boy who had a dog, and the dog helped him deal with the fact that his family was poor. He was a black young boy, and it takes place during the years when there was so much repression and so much discrimination. But reading a book like that in a classroom that's almost all white requires us to ask our students to put themselves in the shoes of the student in the story. No different than if I read to my class The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I asked them as young children to think about what it might have been like to go through a cupboard, a wardrobe, to a mysterious, fantastical place. Every single experience we have as teachers and students with books enables us to think about and develop positive viewpoints about the other. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. There are lots of there are lots of teachers who don't feel qualified enough to talk about discrimination or slavery or prejudice or any other topic that some of these books pick up and deal with. But we shouldn't be afraid to talk about them with children or older students, because if we're afraid to talk about it, then where are they going to hear and have discussions about the realities of the world? We want our students to leave us a little bit more aware of the realities of the world because we want them to succeed in the world. We want them to acquire the soft skills that enable them to be able to get along with everybody. And the only way you enable them to get along with everybody is to present them with opportunities to try to see the world through the eyes of the other person and to talk about what's happening to the other person so that it touches a part of them so they can appreciate what it is they're hearing. To return to the idea of racial diversity, presenting our students with poems written by blacks or Asians or Africans or Latinos. Each little experience enables them to see and to touch the humanity in others. And it's only by touching the humanity in others, by seeing the humanity in others, that they realize that they have things in common. And those things in common bring them together. We should not be afraid to include in our reading lessons things that are even foreign to us. if we read them first and we think about them and make it our business to present them to our students. We're doing a service to ourselves as well as to them. Reading books from all kinds of background, reading books that deal with all kinds of backgrounds, whether they be family or ethnicity or religious backgrounds or racial backgrounds, enables everybody in the classroom to see that we are all part of one humanity. Thanks.